Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the WMA podcast. My name is Jeff Nugent, and today we have joining us is Larry Sprung. Larry started his own wealth management firm called Mitlin Financial in 2004. Before creating Mitlin, he had experience in previous roles at Smith Barney and Bank of America. He acquired his bachelor's degree at Binghamton University and holds a CFP certification. So, welcome, Larry, and thank you for being on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeff. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great having you. So, without further ado, Larry, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey into the financial world?
Yeah, sure. My pleasure to share that. As Jeff mentioned, my name's Larry Sprung. I am a husband first and foremost to Denise for the past 24 years, and dad to Jeremy and Zach. And just happen to be in the wealth management profession. And really, what got me involved in this great profession is growing up. I grew up in a pretty solid middle class family. My dad was a New York City school teacher, and on top of that, he also had side gigs before they were actually side gigs. He had a business on the side, and he was really a hard worker. He did a lot for our family, and unfortunately, my mom was diagnosed with cancer at a very young age, and essentially, I watched him have to handle that and work through that, as well as keeping the family intact and earning a living. And as
Yeah.
I got older in life, I started realizing he never had a financial advisor. And not that that would have mitigated anything that he was necessarily going through, but I always felt like maybe if he did, that would have helped things be a little bit easier for him, take a little bit of the burden off. And it was
Yeah.
a path that I started getting interested in and diving into, learning more about, and entered it right out of college, graduated from Binghamton and entered the profession immediately, and been there ever since.
Yeah, that's a great story, just, getting into the financial world. But you've been, you created your own firm for the past 20 years now. So was there a particular moment or turning point in your career that made you decide that you wanted to start your own firm?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it wasn't a matter of if I was going to start my own firm. It was a matter of when. I've been entrepreneurial from a very young age. I had a paper route when I was 10 years old, and I was always hustling, whatever was hustling, shoveling driveways, delivering papers, whatever it was. So I always had the entrepreneurial bug. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And things presented themselves perfectly, in 2002, 2003 for me to start making those plans and then ultimately making the transition in 2004.
Okay. Yeah, I know starting your own firm is, a tough task. I mean, you're pretty much starting from the ground up. You had a little bit of experience prior to starting your firm, but what were some of the biggest challenges you faced when, you were like, "Hey, let's do this. Let's start the firm." And how did you overcome them?
Yes, I mean, listen, I think there's always challenges starting the firm. Even today, having a firm that's 20 years old, there's always challenges. And early on, as you can imagine, the firm was me. I mean, it was, I
Yeah.
was basically doing everything from the get-go. And, that was a challenge because how do you want to help as many families as you can. You want to, add value as much as you can, and that's limited if you're doing everything. So, that's a challenge, and being able to bring on the right stakeholders to join your team in order to serve the families that we're working with. You want to ensure that they have that same level of commitment, that same level of interest, that same level of care, if not more. And that's a challenging piece of the puzzle in terms of getting those pieces in place and those people in place, as well as the fact that as you grow the business, making sure that you're not doing everything and letting things go, right? And leaning into what I call who is who, not how, which is a concept by Dan Sullivan. Instead of figuring out how to do something, figure out who can do it. And leaning into some of those concepts that help grow and scale a business are challenging at first because, most of us who start a business are type A. We want control. We want to be, handling everything. And you just can't do that if you want to grow and have a greater impact on folks' lives.
Yeah, for sure. And did you see yourself kind of struggling to gain clients in those starting years, or did it just kind of come kind of smooth for you, or did, it take a lot of grind and a lot of long hours.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, listen, I was in a good, unique position that when I left Bank of America, I was a little bit in a unique position that I was able to transition some of those families. It was nearly and enough that it was really sufficient that I could say I had a thriving business at that point. But it was a good start, and yeah, I mean, the grind was on. I was basically 26, 27 years old. Did not my oldest had just been born, so it was one of those things that I had to put my nose to the grindstone and really commit to putting in the work and getting out in the community, meeting people and connections. But I will say, the several years prior to me launching the firm, I also started putting a lot of that in place. And as I had conversations with people in the community or clients, I always said to them, listen, I may not be at this firm forever. I
Yeah.
am committed to this profession. I will be in this profession for, the foreseeable future. I'm not leaving it. I just may not be here. And that
Yeah.
resonated with people. And, when I ended up making the move, people understood and they were fine with that and understood that and appreciated and supported me. And that also helped me quite a bit as I made that transition because people understood why I was making the transition. And, typically people want to help. And if they know, like, and trust you and they can help you too, they will do that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's some of your like coworkers like kind of look at you differently if you said like, "Hey, I'm not going to be here forever, but I'll put in all my effort right now." Did anyone kind of like say anything to you or not like that?
Well, I mean, for me, it wasn't really something that I spoke about in the open with
Okay.
the greater organization. That was really held for uh, the families that I was working with at the time, them, strategic contacts and centers of influence, CPAs, attorneys, and folks in the
Yeah.
community that I knew. It wasn't really something that I shared, overwhelming with the organization themselves. I don't know that they would have taken too kindly to that.
Yeah. Okay. And then networking, is a huge part in the, financial industry, gaining clients, bringing more business to your book. How important is networking in the financial industry, and do you have any tips for building a strong professional network?
Yeah, I mean, I say it all the time. Your network equals your net worth. Your network can bring you anything you want. It can, introduce you to a family that you work with. It could find you a new opportunity, a new job. It could help you solve a problem for somebody else. It's very important. You have to start building that network as early as possible. I was probably a little later to the game, really focusing in on that right out of college, but focusing in and honing in on building that network is super, super important and valuable. We don't talk about building a book. I would ask anybody who wants to come in this profession to not use that term because there is no book. You're working with families, you're having impact, and I think you don't go out building your network with the intention of getting business. You build your network with the intention of helping people, helping your network, helping them be successful and succeed. And at the end of the day, if you start, doing that and elevating yourself and helping people, the right things and the good things will happen for you. So, if you haven't started focusing in on that network, certainly do and get working on that because that's something that can last a lifetime in terms of help from, for you today, tomorrow, and really in perpetuity.
Yeah, most definitely. And I love that. I've never heard anyone say that before. I love that, network equals net worth. Because I
It
mean, yeah, it
does.
makes sense. I mean, everyone wants to help you in your network, so
Yeah.
that's great. And then what's one piece of advice you wish someone had given you when you were just starting out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think, I would say, um, you know, the piece of advice I would give somebody today is not the piece of advice that I would wish somebody gave to me because it didn't exist.
Yeah.
And that is, social media. I think social media is a tremendous tool, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, what have you. I think it's a great tool and a great opportunity to meet, connect with, and build a network. It's easier now than ever. And what I would say is use that tool, but don't use it in a solicitation way. Use it in a way to build that network in order to create opportunities to help people. And if you start that early and you lean into it and you're authentic on there and you're sharing information about your profession, about your life, about your personal situation, people gain interest because they get to know, like, and trust you. And if they do that, regardless of what you do, whether it's a financial profession or something else, if they know, like, and trust you, they're going to lean on you and follow you and hopefully do some kind of business with you or help you do business, something along those lines. So I would highly recommend leaning into those opportunities. They didn't exist when I first started in the business. I would even say that I started a little bit later in the game. I wish I would have started earlier. So I'm trying to impart upon young people to start, leaning into that very early on because it could be a huge benefit to them, again, for a long time to come.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with like TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, I just see a lot of people posting content, including yourself. You have your own podcast, and I see you post a ton, but I feel like that's, the best way to, get your image out there is just posting a bunch of content, even if it's not getting a ton of views, which I've noticed has definitely helped other people.
Yeah, you have to engage too, right? So it's not just on your content. You want to engage on other people's content. If there are other thought leaders in your profession or area of interest, make sure you're commenting, engaging, having conversations with them. That's how people get to know you and like you and trust you. And then they'll reach out to you and they'll see you as an expert and be interested in what your thoughts are about whatever's going on in their situation, and you can help them as well.
Yeah, most definitely. And staying on the topic of content, are there any resources, books, courses, or even people that you would recommend to our listeners?
Oh, I would say so. I mean, especially if you're in the, looking to enter the financial services profession, there's a guy out there by the name of Matt Halloran. He runs a company called Proudmouth, and it's, their tagline is "Be Your Own Loud." Now his business is really around podcasts, creation, production, etc. But he is a marketing genius. So you could watch him, follow him, listen to him. And even if you're not looking to launch a podcast, if you are, it's fantastic, even more so. But if you're not, there's a lot of great marketing tidbits and pieces of information and takeaways that you can take from him and the content that he puts out that you could literally put into practice tomorrow for yourselves.
Great. Okay, yeah, I'll definitely check that out, and I'm assuming our listeners will also have a look at that. And then leading into our last question, there are so many good advisors today. How do you separate yourself from the rest? What specifically do you do that others don't?
That's a tough question, right? And the way I would answer that is it's a very difficult thing, right? It's a very crowded marketplace, a lot of advisors out there. There are good ones and there are bad ones, right? And we feel like we're some of the best that are out there. And I would say, from an advisory standpoint, from an end client, right, the end family, I think it's very difficult for them to understand the difference because there's so much terminology. There's so many different titles. Whether you are an insurance focused advisor or you are an investment focused advisor or you're agnostic and basically do holistic financial planning, we all have similar titles. So for the end public, it's very hard to understand that. And really, what we tell families is, and what we show them is, we show them our value proposition and how we're different. And how we differentiate ourselves from a lot of folks out there is we don't focus just on the numbers. Okay. Every advisor has to be able to know their numbers and work on the numbers. We focus on how do you create a life of joy? What's that client and family's why? Why are they doing what they're doing? Why are they saving what they're saving? And where do they derive the most joy from? And we help focus and hone in on that because at the end of the day, the money they're accumulating is really a tool to help facilitate that joy in their lives. That's at the
Exactly.
end of the day, the heart of what they're. So when we show them that, they're like, wait, you're not showing me charts and graphs and numbers. No, no, that'll come. And that's part of this. That's table stakes. We want to know what really makes you tick and how we can be most successful in helping you. And
Yeah.
sometimes, our level of service compared to other advisors is, you know, maybe an 11 out of 10. And, that's hard to portray to a potential family, right? For them to understand that your level of service is here and their level or what the norm is down here. You
Yeah.
say it, but what ultimately ends up happening is if they end up joining us and we work together, typically within the first 30 to 90 days, we typically get some kind of comment like, I get it now. I see the difference.
Yeah.
And I'll share one story. We had a family, she had three different advisors for about 20 years.
Okay.
She was introduced to us. We started putting a game plan together, helping her out. We told her how we work with people. And, she wanted to start out by sending us one of the relationships. And I said to her, I said, I appreciate that. I would love that. But here's the situation. We can't help command your financial life, your entire financial life, by only being able to see and manage one third of it, let's say, right?
Yeah.
We need to manage it all. And she was quite hesitant about doing it because it was long-standing relationships, but she ultimately felt comfortable, moved it over. And within like a month, she said, I get it now. And she goes, you know what? Even more so, you just made my life so much easier that it's like unbelievable. She goes, I have so much less stress because we're working with you. And I know you guys are taking care of handling everything. So I think some of that comes up front, the differentiation. Some of that is shown in what we put out there and how we talk with families and what we talk about. But
Yeah.
ultimately, the proof is in the pudding, right? Anybody can say anything, but you have to, if you want to be successful and really wow people, you have to back it up with action when all's said and done once they become a family. And not just in those 30, 60, 90 days, you have to continue that long term. And that's why we're working in many cases with second and third generations of the families that we started with 20 plus years ago.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great answer. I love that story. Just, you obviously bringing her joy by taking all that, stress off her shoulders. So that's a great
Yep.
story to hear. But yeah, I mean, there's so many advisors, and I mean, everyone's different in their own way. But obviously, you're gonna want to have to put the client, first, and take their priorities first. So yeah, that's a great answer and a great story. But that's all I have for us today, Lawrence. If you have anything else you want to share or anything, but. That's all I have, and I really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Yeah, Jeff, I appreciate it as well. And if, I did write a book, which I think is pretty, pertinent for college age and, early 20s, if you will, called Financial Planning Made Personal. I think there's a lot of good tips in there and a lot of good ideas and concepts that are easy to follow. So if people want to check that out, if you go to mitlin.us slash the word TWO chapters, you could download two chapters of the book, read it. If it resonates with you, you again can make the purchase on Amazon, but it'll give you an idea of the content. And we've gotten a lot of great feedback from college students and recent graduates that have shared with us that it's extremely helpful. It's been extremely helpful in their early financial journey.
Yeah, and I will link that also in the description of this podcast
Sure.
as well,
I
so
appreciate that.
everyone
And
can
thank
see
you for
that.
the time. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you hopping on the podcast. Everyone will for sure enjoy it.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed the discussion, please like and share the podcast on Apple and Spotify. The Spartan Journal podcast is part of Michigan State University's Wealth Management Association, a student organization whose goal is to inspire the next generation of financial advisors. The Spartan Journal news team releases a newsletter every Monday morning comprised of financial literacy and the week's market updates. Feel free to follow us on social media at MSUWMA and check out our website at msuwma.com. Anything heard on either the MSUWMA or Spartan Journal podcasts is for educational purposes only and should not be considered as investment advice.